India's advancement in economic and social spheres is forging a new paradigm for global development.
Make in India आज समय की मांग है.
We are enjoying a continuum of growth, progress and tradition.
India is on the move.
And with the unwavering certainty of a bold vision, we've propelled India onto an unstoppable path. Our economy is constantly renewing and reinventing, putting India in a globally enviable position. And a meticulously outlined political agenda will strengthen our regional and global clout. Presenting the 4th edition of the Times Now Summit, the confluence of leading policymakers, strategists, experts and influencers shaping India's unstoppable growth. Only on the Times Network.
Well, Ravneet, this is an exciting conversation that we are going to have, because many people know that Ravneet is someone who is known for breaking the glass ceiling. But I'm not just talking about gender glass ceilings here, I'm also talking about the educational ones. So tell us about how you feel. Today, for example, Times Now Summit's entire theme has been India stoppable, unstoppable. What does that mean for you, and how are you going to be driving that vision of India unstoppable with Deakin University?
Great. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. My journey in international education is about more than 3 decades old. And I feel that when you think about India unstoppable, it is exactly what I feel over the 30 years that you experience. We are here a population where 27% of the Indians are in the age group of 15 to 29. And that is the demographic dividend that I think India is going to be absolutely proud of. The point that I'd like to make here is the importance of education and skilling in this country specifically, because of our demographic here, is if we are going to be making impact in the world, I think the first thing that we have to think about is how are we going to optimize this demographic dividend? What are we going to do to train the youth of this country that are going to have impact into the future? So I think I'm really excited. You know, we are a strong economy in India. It's a changing landscape, not just in education, but, across. We play a very important role in the sort of world stage at all forums. Recently, the G20 made us quite proud as well. So it is a strong base where we come from. The future is exciting enough, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
It's very interesting. You mentioned the 3-decade experience that you have. And of course, Deakin has been at the forefront of it, one of the pioneers in bringing about change in the educational landscape. But tell us how and why you think that you can make the students' experience, because you've been speaking about the demography and how that is one of the biggest dividends that you have, especially here in India. How are you going to make this journey special for the students?
Look, I think student experience is one of the most important parts of university and school education. If you actually look at universities around the world, there is a specific rating criteria that is called student experience. And that dovetails across all the aspects, which is use of technology in education, which means the pedagogy, which means the curriculum development, which means internationalization, which means how the student has gained over the 3 years. It's not just a piece of paper at the end of the day. And the rating actually tells you where you stand on the international stage. And I think that's where it's really important to ensure whatever we do in India, whatever we bring to India from overseas, or whatever we do in India with India, the student experience is in the center of it. The student, in my view, is the learner in the center of the entire, sort of sphere that you are operating in. And we should not forget that they are the real customers, and we should do things that we need to do to make them, sort of pioneers and future leaders. At Deakin University, for example, we've had a 5-star rating for the last 15 years consecutively. And we've been a university that has dealt with, technology and its impact into the future quite intensely, even much before COVID.
What are some of the parameters that you're discussing when the students rate the university?
It's not just the students. There are also agencies that rate the university. Mm-hmm. Students rate the university by their a list, but I think there are agencies that rate the universities based on new age pedagogy, new age technology, what you're looking at into the future. How are you preparing the youth for the jobs of tomorrow? I think that is also an important part of an internationalization, gender balance, diversity, inclusion. Mm-hmm. All of these things are extremely important on world stage. In terms of the rankings of universities.
There seem to be shared goals because even in the National Education Policy of 2020, some of the aims that you have right now highlighted, for example, inclusivity and also internationalization of education, that's also part of it. If you can just explain to us, what would that entail if there are, for example, Indian universities who want to bring in the next or rather go into the next level of tech education, tech-enabled education. If you can also specifically talk about AI-enabled education, what would that be and what would your advice be?
Look, I think the NEP has actually transformed the education system over the 35 years. For 35 years, India did not really look at the pedagogy and the change in the education system. NEP actually brought that into light. And I think that the 5 key elements of NEP, which is internationalization, inclusivity, use of technology, I think looking at industry collaboration, and I think focusing on engaging, with stakeholders to have impact. I think those are the key elements, and curriculum development, I think also with international partnerships. I think those are the elements that have made India be able to collaborate internationally. I mean, having been in this field for 3 decades, I realized that only after NEP have we been able to have real engagement with Indian institutions. Because previously, there was no credit possible between institutions. There was no mobility possible between institutions. But today, it's become mandatory for every Indian institution, especially in the top 100, that they do need to think beyond where their comfort zone is. They have to think about how do I make this use of technology as part of my curriculum development? How do I keep internationalization not just as a division that's going to look at where the future is, but it is in the DNA of where I'm sitting. And it has given confidence to foreign universities, Meghna, to come into India and do joint degrees, do joint partnerships. I mean, at Deakin University today, for the matter, we have got about 300 students that are studying in different partner institutions on a joint program. So this was not heard of. So I really compliment India on the NEP, and I think that the NEP is transformational. It is also focusing on the end product of what does the student need to do. Also the flexibility of skilling into education. Education is not just knowledge. It is a combination of how you bring in skilling into the education. So, all of that together does make NEP quite attractive to India.
And it's very interesting because one of the things that you had talked about is internationalization of education. And it would be very exciting times for you, Ravneet, isn't it? After all, the Australian Prime Minister has announced that the first ever Deakin University campus is coming up right here in India, in Gujarat to be precise. And many congratulations for that. I'm sure that you're really looking forward to it. Educational initiatives, breakthroughs, of course, is something that we are going to be expecting. But also, talk us through how you want to bring in some of the cultural confluence as well through education.
Look, education is something that is the most important aspect when you look at the horizontal things at play. So Gift City campus for Deakin University, world's first international campus in India, Deakin's first international campus anywhere in the world. Today, as we celebrate that, is actually also a combination of our journey in India over the 30-year period. So, our focus has been in India, with India, for India, and primarily that has brought together the confluence of this campus in my mind. The campus, and you will hear the finance minister speak after that, is actually her brainchild. She actually initiated the Sez Zone within Gift City for international universities to set up their campus in their own right, which means that we are governed by the rules of Australian education and rules of Australian system operative in India. And this particular campus is in the midst of Gift City, which does trading of more than $50 billion a day. There are 27 large international banks and insurance companies, 250 companies in all in the setup. So for a university that wants to operate in an economy like India, this is gold.
To be in the midst of it all, in the very hub of
it all. The two courses that we are going to run there are Masters of Cybersecurity and Masters of Business Analytics. And we've had companies, banks, fintech centers from world over come and talk to us about how we can partner to co-deliver, co-develop, and co-engage the youth into jobs of the future.
To ask you about how companies, and especially where you are going to be setting up your first campus, companies have been really worried about first how to collect the data, how to use the data, analyze the data, and keep the data safe as well. Which is why there are subjects like cybersecurity, data analysis. These are really in demand. A lot of the traditional educational setups that we have had in the Indian landscape, that has been missing. So how is Deakin's future goals going to be aligned towards the future goals of what is required by India, the Indian industry, as well as the government?
So I think data, we all know data is gold. What data, companies hold, how data is secured, and how you use data for predictive analysis, I think is going to make a difference in every sector. So when we talk to companies, whether in GIFT or internationally or in other parts of the country, the two things that we hear is absolutely how do I manage data, how do I make use of data, and how do I use artificial intelligence for ethical outcomes for my business? How is data going to impact my future business? So I think degrees like artificial intelligence and use of data, business analytics, data analytics is going to be important. The second thing is how do I make sure that data that is gold is safe, right? And that's where I think cybersecurity for us comes into play. And I think what is really important in this system is, how do you actually do multidiscipline work as well? So it's not just about cybersecurity or business analytics. Say media companies, right? How do you use data and AI for media companies? How do you use data and AI for insurance companies? I think that is going to be the future, not the future, actually it's here. And how do you actually maximize that is going to be the important part in terms of the future of education, the future of jobs, and the future of companies has to come together, to give a solution to what the world is looking at. And if I may say that in India, I think one of the issues that we've had is the skill sector. We have not focused enough on upskilling, reskilling the youth for jobs of today and tomorrow. And I think that NEP is a starting point, but implementation of NEP to ensure that this outcome is met is really an important part of how we go into the future.
In fact, I wanted to speak to you specifically about skilling because you mentioned it, because Deakin also has a job readiness program. It was launched on the Skill India digital platform. Now, all of us who studied in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s would know that it was about subjects. It was not about skills at the time. What are these soft skills that you are going to be imparting, and why do you deem it important for it to be imparted, and how is it going to be different? Because some people may have some reservations saying that we want our children to learn up and read similar kind of curriculums that we have had in the past.
So Meghna, I think it's really important to think about going back a step to say, why do you need skills? What is the importance of skills? You know, if I have to do a job today, I necessarily don't have to have the bookish knowledge or the rote learning knowledge of how that is required. It's all there on the internet. What I need to do is application of it. How am I going to use that? And that requires skills that I need today and I will need to update into the future. So the job readiness program that we have touches upon 6 key skill sets that anybody in any job will need to focus on and build on. And I think that's a starting point for us in terms of ensuring that the students are able to at least get an initial exposure. You know, how do you actually look at critical thinking? How do you look at communication? How do you look at digital technology? How do you look at focus on problem solving? These things are not, and if you see the latest OECD report, the talk is about lack of skills in these areas. Technical knowledge is very strong, but the ability to look at all of this, and impact your work and your employee satisfaction and employer satisfaction is where the difficulty comes through.
And you'll be catering to young professionals as well, because as you said, it's not just about skilling, but reskilling, upskilling.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for example, today we talk about energy transition, one of the biggest themes, right? Do we have the workforce in India that is ready, or anywhere in the world, that is ready to manage this energy transformation journey?
Absolutely not, unfortunately.
The answer is no, right? So the question is, what are institutions doing to ensure, one, the high-end research on renewables, hydrogen, looking at storage continues, but how are you going to ensure that the workforce is able to deal with this energy transition phase of the next 10, 20, 30 years? So if we don't think about what is going to be required down the line, we are not going to ever reach. We'll always be catching up. We'll always play the catch up. So I think a lot of effort with think tanks, with top institutions around the world need to come together to think about, let's pick the top 5 themes that are going to impact the world. And how do you build people for today and tomorrow through that? And I think that India's very strong in that space because of what I mentioned, the population demographic, yeah? But the know-how can come in with knowledge partners from around the world. And I think when I met the Prime Minister of India, I think that's the discussion that really did come out. That if you can bring in the best to India, work with India to support the strength for the world, you know, you're in a win-win situation. For years, Meghna, India has been a source country for students going overseas for international education. Today, India can be the host country to bring in international education into India. That, I feel, is the changing space of education.
Study in India, isn't it?
Study in India, yes.
It's very interesting because you mentioned the Prime Minister. He has also endorsed Deakin University, congratulated you all ahead of the setting up of the new campus. What was your interaction with him like? And what is his vision? And what does he expect from universities such as Deakin, who are willing to now come set up in India and with an Australian curriculum?
Look, my sense after meeting the Prime Minister and then having some sort of key interactions with the PMO has been all about how do I make a difference to the young Indian? How do I make sure that the young Indian gets the best opportunity, whether in India or overseas, How do I make sure that we are able to attract the best institutions to come and work in India, in collaboration with India, to make a difference to the future of India? That's the gist that I got, Meghna, after talking to the Prime Minister. And I think the other thing that I thought, which was the new India feel that I got, was it was not that what is written in stone is in stone. It was a lot about tell us what you want changed. Tell us how we can make this better. Tell us what we can do differently. And my whole experience of Gift City campus, believe it or not, from ideation to execution was 11 months. A total of 11 months to set up the campus, from ideation to execution. With the Indian bureaucracy, you would have thought that's impossible. But it worked, and it happened. So I think that I think is the new India. That I think is the changing India.
Earlier in the day, we had the Delhi Lieutenant General who came and say working in Delhi is almost like chane ke dal chabana. But it's interesting to have the Dharmendra Pradhanji, the Education Minister, come out and say that the Deakin University campus, which is coming up in Gujarat, is a pivotal milestone in building a new India. What's your vision for that?
Yeah, it is a milestone because where you bring the world's best, in partnership, in collaboration with the best in India, I think that's where ultimately you are able to see a future that's going to be more impactful. So I think that the minister talks about the changing face, the ability to set up international education campus in India is the changing face. And I think that's going to be really, really the face that will change how India makes, its youth ready for global jobs and jobs of the future, not just in India, but internationally as well.
Well, very interesting to have spoken to you, Ravneet Pahwa, and we are really looking forward for the kind of collaboration that India and Australia is headed towards with Deakin University. Many congratulations, and of course, best of luck for your future endeavors.
Thank you.
But
Thank you very much.
the person that you had mentioned, of course, was the finance minister who helped you set up the SEZ, which has come up, which has facilitated this next big journey for you. I believe she's also in the house. So we are going to have an interesting chat with her. But thank you ever so much for joining us here on Times Now Summit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.